Shedeur Sanders found himself at the center of a story he didn't ask for, and Tommy Rees became the unlikely narrator, explaining how things spiraled behind the scenes in Cleveland. Rees painted a picture that felt less like NFL preparation and more like navigating a malfunctioning machine, one where every gear jams at the worst possible moment. He described an offense caught between ambitious theory and sloppy execution, a unit with mismatched timing and no shared discipline to steady it.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
Even the simplest fundamentals have become unpredictable, and Rees admitted that expecting Sanders to gain meaningful reps inside this environment would be reckless. His pointed remarks toward Kevin Stefanski's quarterback management only deepened the impression that Cleveland's internal systems need more than minor tweaks. Rees's explanation positions Sanders as a player waiting for the structure around him to mature before he can take on real responsibility. Until the Browns fix their operational cracks, blocking, communication, situational discipline. Rees believes rushing Sanders into live reps would only magnify the instability. His comments weren't dramatic or emotional. They were the kind of grounded realism that highlights just how far Cleveland must go before Sanders can be developed properly. So, Tommy Rees didn't just throw a stone into the pond. He launched a full-on cinder block into the middle of the Cleveland Browns' offensive situation, and now the ripples are impossible to ignore. What started as a routine press conference turned into one of the most unexpectedly revealing moments of the Browns season. Rees, in the kind of honesty NFL fans never get from coordinators mid-season, spoke up about exactly why the offense is stuck in the mud. And yes, why Shedeur Sanders is barely seeing the field. No coded language. No, we're evaluating everything routine. He flat out said it. The offense is a mess, and politics are in play. Let's stop right there. Team politics is not something you usually hear out loud. That's locker room whisper stuff. Back office gossip. But Rees said it openly. And in doing so, he exposed a truth that has been gnawing at this team all year. Cleveland isn't failing because of a lack of talent. It's failing because the execution is dysfunctional. The communication is off, and there's no clear direction. This isn't about just calling better plays or getting back to basics. Rees is saying the very culture and structure of the offense are broken. That's a major statement. And it becomes even bigger when you realize how it directly connects to the curious case of Shedeur Sanders. Everyone's been asking the same question for weeks. Why isn't Shedeur playing? Why, with other quarterbacks injured and the offense flailing, hasn't the guy with the most upside seen more than a handful of meaningless snaps? Well, Rees just answered it. Sort of. He didn't say Sanders isn't ready. He didn't say Sanders is hurt. What he did say, in not-so-subtle terms, is that the current system is too chaotic to drop a developing quarterback into. That the infrastructure around him, offensive line, play calling, timing, isn't stable enough to support his growth. And throwing him in now would be less of a development opportunity and more of a liability. The real issue? It's not just physical chaos. It's the internal decisions being made. Rees called out the disorganization, the lack of cohesion, the busted playbook. He even described it as being like teaching a cat to swim. That's how disconnected and unstable the offense has become. You can have the best quarterback talent on the bench, but if the supporting cast can't block, can't run the right routes, and can't follow a plan, then it's a disaster waiting to happen. And still, Rees made it very clear that Shedeur Sanders is a priority. Just not right now. That's a tough pill to swallow, especially for fans who've been desperate to see him on the field. But Rees isn't making decisions based on hype. He's trying to create an actual foundation. He said it himself. He's building this thing from the ground up. Fundamentals first. Discipline over desperation. And that means avoiding the shiny temptation of rushing Sanders into a burning building just to appease the public. What's more telling is how Rees subtly aimed that spotlight toward Kevin Stefanski. He didn't name names, but the message was clear. The quarterback decisions? Not entirely his. There's friction, disagreement, maybe even misalignment at the top. And Rees is pushing back against that in the only way he can, by speaking directly to the fans and media, and being blunt about the internal mess. This approach might sound radical, but in a way, it's the most responsible move he could make. He's protecting a player. He's being honest about a broken structure. And he's trying to implement actual change, even if it makes things harder in the short term. Still, there's risk here. Honesty like this doesn't always land well in NFL circles. Front offices don't love it. PR departments definitely don't love it. And players? It depends. But Rees clearly doesn't care about playing politics. He cares about fixing a culture that's been dragging the offense down all year long. He talked about building rhythm and consistency. He emphasized mastering the basics, blocking, timing, execution. Not just winging it and hoping a star quarterback can clean up the mess. And in a league obsessed with highlight plays and instant gratification, that mindset is rare. It's also a massive contrast to how the Browns have operated in recent years. Cleveland has never had a shortage of talent. The roster has been loaded before. But every time things start to look promising, it's the same story. No consistency, no identity, and eventually no results. Rees wants to flip that. He's saying, we're not going to do the hype cycle this time. We're doing it right, even if it's slow. And yes, fans are skeptical. Rightfully so. Because how many times have they heard the "we're building for the future" speech? How many quarterbacks have they been told are the answer, only to watch them crash and burn in systems that never supported them? Rees knows that. That's why his plan isn't about promises. It's about discipline. About starting at the foundation and making sure that when Shedeur does play, he's not walking into a disaster. He's walking into a functioning, disciplined, well-coached offense that gives him a real chance. That's not flashy. It's not going to trend on social media. But it might be exactly what Cleveland needs. Because what's the alternative? Rushing Sanders in because the fan base is loud? Sacrificing his development to mask the fact that the offense still doesn't know who it is? That's not coaching. That's panic. And Rees isn't here for that. He's betting on the long term. He's rejecting quick fixes. And he's not afraid to take the heat that comes with it. Still, that doesn't mean time is unlimited. Patience wears thin in this league. Every bad loss, every missed opportunity, every stalled drive, those moments stack up. And eventually, there's a reckoning. Rees has bought himself some breathing room with this honesty, but it won't last forever. The next step is turning that honesty into progress. Because if the Browns continue to flounder, and Sanders still isn't playing, the questions will come back. And louder. That's the risk of speaking up. You have to back it up with results. But if this strategy works, if the offense finds stability and Shedeur is introduced into a functioning system where he can actually thrive, then Rees' decision to hold the line might go down as the moment the culture actually started to change. So the pressure is on. The spotlight's brighter. And Shedeur Sanders? He's still waiting. Still watching. Still being kept on ice, not because of a lack of talent, but because there's finally a coach in the building willing to say, we're going to do this the right way. No shortcuts. Now the only question left is, can the Browns get their act together before the window closes? Let us know where you stand. Was Tommy Rees right to expose the internal chaos and hold Shedeur back? Or is this just another wasted opportunity in a franchise that can't get out of its own way? Tap like if you think the honesty is overdue. Hit subscribe to stay locked in as this saga unfolds. And drop your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear it all. Let's not pretend this ends with one press conference. Because now that Tommy Rees has cracked open the lid on the Browns' offensive dysfunction, there's no putting it back. The questions aren't going away. The spotlight is only getting hotter. And every second Shedeur Sanders spends on the sideline is going to feel like a countdown. Tick, 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 toward either a breakthrough or a total breakdown. This moment right here, it's a turning point. Not just for Rees. Not just for Sanders. For the entire organization. Let's back up for a second. Think about what it actually means when your offensive coordinator goes public with phrases like team politics, lack of direction, and chaotic play calling. That's not frustration. That's not just being fed up after a bad game. That's someone saying, this isn't working, and it hasn't been working for a while. He basically exposed the core issue. The Browns' offense isn't failing because of a lack of effort or even a lack of skill. It's failing because it doesn't know what it is. There's no system identity, no rhythm, no structure, and worst of all, no trust. This is what happens when talented players are dropped into an unstable environment and expected to just make it work. Spoiler, they can't. Rees knows it. He said it flat out. The problems aren't about highlight real talent. They're about the stuff no one wants to talk about. Accountability, repetition, timing, structure. That's why Shedeur's not playing. And while fans might not like the answer, it's the truth. He's not being protected from the defense. He's being protected from his own team. Let that sink in. That's how shaky the Browns' offense is right now. Not only is it not helping quarterbacks, it's actively putting them at risk. And Rees, to his credit, is refusing to feed Shedeur into that machine. He doesn't want a Band-Aid. He wants a real fix. Which is exactly why he's building from the ground up. He talked about blocking, timing, execution. The three things fans rarely care about until they're missing. And right now, they're missing. All of them. Cleveland's offense, at its worst, has looked like a bunch of talented players trying to perform a play they never rehearsed. And it shows. Busted routes, missed protections, stalled drives. The haunted playbook, quote, wasn't just clever, it was accurate. But the real damage? It's not the bad drives or the poor stats. It's what that chaos does to a young quarterback. Drop a guy like Shedeur Sanders into that mess, and not only does it hurt his development, it risks his entire trajectory. Bad habits form. Confidence erodes. The media turns. Fans turn. And just like that, another prospect is labeled a bust, when in reality, he never had a fair shot. That's what Rees is trying to prevent. And it takes guts. Because let's not sugarcoat this. Rees is swimming upstream. In a league obsessed with instant results, he's pushing patience. In a fan base craving a spark, he's reinforcing fundamentals. In a locker room probably full of mixed opinions, he's sticking to discipline over drama. And he's doing it all while subtly challenging the status quo, calling out the very decisions that have kept Sanders off the field. His comments about Stefanski? You didn't need a decoder ring to get the message. The quarterback decisions don't make sense, and it's not about talent. It's about internal dysfunction. That's what's holding Sanders back. Not his readiness, not his performance, but the unstable system around him. This is where things get complicated. Because Rees isn't the head coach. He's not the GM. But he's also not just an assistant trying to stay in his lane. By stepping up and speaking out, he's taking ownership of the direction this offense is heading. Or at the very least, making it very clear that he doesn't want to be held responsible for a sinking ship if no one's willing to patch the holes. That's rare. And it's risky. But it might also be necessary. The Browns have seen what happens when they prioritize flash over structure. They've lived it season after season. Big names, big moments, and then collapse. Rees is trying to break that cycle. He's not offering a magic fix. He's offering a blueprint. Start with the basics, build from there, and when the system is stable, then unleash the talent. And that talent? It's still Shedeur Sanders. Let's not get it twisted. Rees hasn't walked back his belief in Sanders at all. In fact, everything he's doing points to the opposite. He's protecting him for a reason. Because when the system is ready, when the offense can finally function, that's when Sanders steps in. Not as a placeholder, but as the centerpiece. The quarterback they're going to build around. But right now, that platform doesn't exist. The offensive line is in disarray. Play calling lacks rhythm. Receiver routes are inconsistent. And the decision-making process around who plays when seems driven by something other than football logic. That's what Rees is fighting against. And you can tell this isn't about ego. It's not about taking over or making headlines. It's about trying to inject honesty and discipline into a culture that's been avoiding both. Of course, not everyone's going to buy in. This kind of cultural reset doesn't happen overnight. It's slow. It's messy. And most of the time, people don't even realize it's happening until the results start showing. But the irony here? The fans who are most frustrated about Sanders not playing are the ones Rees is actually trying to help. Because if he rushed Shedeur out there right now just to quiet the noise, what happens if he gets hurt behind a crumbling line? What happens if he loses confidence throwing into busted routes? That's not development. That's sabotage. Rees wants more than that. He wants Shedeur to succeed, not just survive. That's why the plan is to wait, build the structure, fix the fundamentals. And then, when the offense is finally something resembling functional, then it's time. Then we see what Shedeur can really do. And let's be honest, there's a part of this that's personal for Rees. Not in a petty way, but in a don't ruin a good thing for short-term clout way. He knows what's at stake. Not just for this team, but for this player. He's betting everything on the idea that building something stable will produce better results than caving to fan pressure and rolling the dice mid-chaos. So now the question isn't if Sanders plays. It's when. And more importantly, how. Because when that moment comes, the microscope will be intense. The expectations will be sky high. And if Rees' plan works, if the offense is actually ready to support a young quarterback, then this whole slow build approach might just be vindicated. But if it doesn't, if things keep spiraling, if the culture doesn't shift, then this whole honest, methodical strategy might end up buried under another wave of Browns dysfunction. And Shedeur? He risks becoming the latest casualty of a system that couldn't get out of its own way. That's what's on the line. That's why Rees spoke out. Not for drama, not for headlines, but because someone had to say it. Someone had to say the offense isn't just broken, it's unsafe. Someone had to admit that decisions aren't always being made for the right reasons. Someone had to pull the curtain back and show that talent alone isn't enough if the foundation is cracked. So yeah, it's a bold move. But maybe it's the only one that gives Sanders a real shot at long-term success. And now, it's your move, Cleveland. Are you willing to be patient enough to let this thing build the right way? Or are you going to demand fireworks now and risk burning down the future? And here we are, right in the eye of the storm. Tommy Rees didn't just speak up. He changed the entire atmosphere around the Cleveland Browns. One press conference, one unusually candid moment, and suddenly the facade cracked. The questions that had been brewing quietly, now they're front and center. The tension that's been simmering all season, it just boiled over. This isn't about media spin anymore. It's not about speculation or locker room whispers. Rees said it himself. There's dysfunction. There's disarray. There are politics interfering with football decisions. And right at the heart of it all is Shedeur Sanders, waiting in the shadows of a system too unstable to support him. That's the part fans can't wrap their heads around. And honestly, who can blame them? You got one of the most hyped college quarterbacks in the country, a player with arm talent, mobility, pedigree, and poise. He walks into Cleveland as a potential franchise quarterback, someone who could change the narrative. And yet, he's barely touched the field. It doesn't add up until Rees explained what no one else would. Sanders isn't being held back because he's not good enough. He's being held back because the system around him is in no shape to support anyone, let alone a developing quarterback. And that is such a damning indictment of where the Browns are as a team right now. Because the truth is, it takes more than talent to succeed in the NFL. It takes timing, continuity, communication. And the Browns, according to Rees, they have none of that right now. You've got a playbook that's constantly changing. You've got an offensive line that can't hold its shape. You've got decision makers who aren't always aligned. It's a recipe for failure. And Rees knows it. That's why he refuses to throw Sanders into the chaos just to quiet the crowd. It's not fear. It's foresight. This isn't a coach trying to avoid tough decisions. It's a coach making the tough decision to say no when everyone else is screaming yes. And that takes more than just guts. That takes accountability. Because here's what no one really wants to say out loud. If Shedeur were to go out there now, behind a broken offensive line, with a fractured playbook and unclear leadership, and if he struggled, the narrative would flip in a second. Suddenly, it's maybe he's not ready, or he's not the guy, and the damage is done. Rees is preventing that. Not just for Sanders, but for the Browns. Because once you ruin a quarterback's confidence in the NFL, you rarely get it back. We've seen it too many times. Young talent rushed into unstable systems, asked to carry more than they should, and blamed when the house collapses. That's not a development strategy. That's negligence. Rees is trying to break the cycle. He's telling the team, the front office, and the fans, we need to fix ourselves before we hand the keys over to our future. And even if that doesn't give you a headline moment this week, it might give you a franchise quarterback next season. That's the vision. But let's not pretend it's easy. Every week Sanders sits, the pressure builds. Every press conference without clarity, every offensive drive that goes nowhere, every game where fans chant for Shedeur, it all adds up. It becomes noise. And noise can shake even the most disciplined plans. Rees is walking a tightrope. He's not just coordinating an offense. He's managing egos, expectations, and a fan base that's been burned too many times to blindly trust anyone. And now that he's peeled back the curtain, he's going to be held accountable, whether he likes it or not. This is where leadership gets tested. Not when things are going well, but when they're messy, when the spotlight is glaring, and when the easy path would be to cave. But Rees isn't caving. He's doubling down. He's betting on discipline over spectacle. He's betting that if he can clean up the chaos, Sanders will have everything he needs to not just play, but thrive. And really, that's what fans want too, isn't it? Not just to see Sanders on the field, but to see him succeed. To watch him step into a system that works, to see him throw with confidence, move with purpose, lead without scrambling, to survive broken plays. That's the goal. And it's still within reach, if the Browns can get out of their own way long enough to build the structure he needs. So the story's not over. Not even close. Tommy Rees has set the tone. Now the rest of the organization has to catch up or get exposed. And Shedeur Sanders? He's still waiting. Still ready. Still watching everything unfold, knowing that when his number does get called, the expectations will be sky high. He won't get the benefit of the doubt. He'll be expected to deliver immediately. Rees is making sure the team is ready for that moment. Because when it comes, there won't be any more excuses. Let's know how you see this playing out. Was Rees right to shine a light on the dysfunction? Or should Sanders be out there learning on the fly? Tap the like button if you're tired of sugar-coated coach speak. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter in this saga. And sound off in the comments with your take. Because one way or another, this is going to define the Brown season.